Okay, so Frieren season 2 is unfortunately finished. We watched it as it was coming out, and now it's time for us to talk about it. You might have caught some of my episode reviews. If not, now's your time to go ahead and subscribe so that you get notified of more episode reviews coming out. But for Frieren season 2, what you want to talk about?
Ooh, there's so many great things. Oh gosh. I think we should actually start with themes. I think that makes a little bit more sense. So, what theme really stood out to you from this season?
You're right. That's a good idea because theme is kind of overarching.
Yeah.
And okay, so it's called Further and Beyond Journey's End. And not to be cliche, but something about season 2 that really stood out to me was the fact that it was a journey. And I mean, they were traveling the entire time. From episode 1, they were already on the move, and then all throughout, we started in the south, we ended up in the north. They went by land, they went by sea. I think they crossed some mountains at one point. They had to wait for seasons to end, like winter had to be done.
Yeah.
They were traveling the whole time. And then even by the final episode, they are still traveling. I also thought that this season 2 functioned as a bridge between season 1 and 3. And that's really not to say that I think season 2 is like filler, because God forbid say that. But that's just how it felt. Maybe it's because they were traveling the whole time, whereas like season 1 had some definitive moments, and season 3 seems like it's going to be a big showdown with Mox. Spoiler. But season 2 felt like traveling or like a journey.
Point. I mean, travel is always going to be a little bit of a the fact that journey's in the name, so
Yeah.
that stood out to me. But for me, it's like, what really helped you as far as like the people in the moments? Like, what stood out in your mind?
Right. So not only are they actually like traveling location wise, but they're also, we had some like journeys with their relationships. So we had like deepening relationships. We had Frieren being able to help Fern and Stark. Like, for example, she gave both of them dating advice. Grandma Frieren thought that was hilarious. We also, of course, you have Frieren telling them stories from her past and her previous journey. And of course, you also have Fern and Stark, who got to kind of grow together. They got to try out like dating, and maybe even the three of those main characters developing their teamwork in battle.
That really stood out to me, especially like Stark's very important role in this. But I think for me, it was like I kind of like the flashbacks. So let's talk about a little bit of the people from the past that happened during this season.
Yeah, so that was another thing of like, yeah, they connected to the past and the present, and yeah, with people and moments in both the past and present. And so, like, for example, some of the people from the past, like, we got to hear about the hero from the South. That wasn't in season 1 at all. It basically all was in one the second episode of the season. But it was a really, really cool story. It had a ton of information. We got to learn about who is this hero of the South, but then like how he defeated, various demons, how he had this like special ability of foresight, how he met Frieren like pre Himmel was my understanding, but then he kind of set her up for meeting Himmel, and obviously we know Himmel is such an important character to Frieren, so that was one with the Hero of the South. Speaking of Himmel, we had eventually Himmel's memoir and more lessons learned from Himmel. For example, I can think of the thing where he explained about requesting payment for these various jobs that they do. And he explained why, because sometimes they're accepting jobs from villages that don't really have much to offer. But he says, we don't want to make these people indebted to us. So we're going to request something. And then that connects to Frieren always asking for a grimoire, which they're always like these really, really funny ones. So I love that.
So, talking about being indebted,
Uh-huh.
let's talk about a theme that stood out in my mind, which was money.
I know, yes. Because in the very first episode, they literally show them having pennies. And then why in the very last episode, they still only had pennies? Why was that?
I'm sorry, that the money management skills of Prairie is next level to me.
Yeah, Freeman don't have any money management skills
Okay.
because it has to be on Fern, who I argue is kind of like the parent figure
Yeah.
in this little trio.
that
Yeah,
was
they're
very.
taking all these different jobs from people, whether it's like cleaning a statue or ousting a demon, whatever, and they get payment. Look what happened in Norm's company. Like they presumably got a lot of money from Norm's company because she found a whole bunch of rare gems and stuff. But then she blows it.
Yeah,
Frieren, who is ancient, you think would have wisdom, she's lived all this time. She totally blows her money.
age does not always denote wisdom. So that was because I was like, oh, she's in a market again. Oh no, no, stop her! Somebody stop her!
I
No,
know.
nobody ever
But
stopped
I'm a
her.
sucker for like a shopping episode, which a lot of isekai has that, and I'm a sucker for a shopping episode.
Ugh. But I think another part that kind of stood out to me as far as the themes was really like I think home stood out, but not in the way you thought it would.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm glad you mentioned that. Like home, because that was, I'll say, tying up the bow. And what I mean is like it was at the beginning of season two, and then they totally brought it back at the end. There was multiple moments when home came up. So they did bring it up at the beginning, specifically talking about, Fern's home and how war pushed her out until Hyter kind of saved her. Stark and his complicated relationship with his home village, where he had to run away and he has this complicated relationship with his family. Then we get into the northern lands, the Northern Plateau, and you know, I'm watching it and we're thinking, why would people want to live here when there's all these demons and beasts and, whatever, these things that are going to hurt them, destroying their homes, killing people? Norm's company, their logistics got all messed up because of demons destroying stuff. But they made an explicit point to say, this is people's homes. Essentially, why would they want to leave? But then that gave Freeman and their party this sort of sense of duty to protect people's homes.
Mm-hmm.
Then I thought about this kind of later on because we had like a 3 episode arc about Genau,
Yeah.
which was really like the Divine Revolte arc. But for me, it was very much about Genau. Because in fact, Revolte was there and then he was killed. But we had Genau for 3 episodes. Anywho, Genau was from the north. So that's actually his home as well. They didn't make necessarily a huge deal about it, but like even that connects to his home as well. Same thing for Methode. Come to find out, she's also from the north. Like she was assigned by Siri to go there with Genau, but they're both from there. That's their home. Like they may have some sort of a prerogative to try and protect it as well. So that was really, really cool. And then even the very last episode of the season, we see Dinkin and he's traveling to his hometown. So the whole time there's this stuff related to a hometown. Now, in thinking about this, I was wondering, I was like, I don't think they've really said anything about Freeren's like home. I know she's like very old and like maybe they'll get around to it. We have learned plenty from her past, but like personally, I couldn't say what is her home. I don't know. But that's just kind of something that I thought. They had so much stuff about home.
Maybe that's a teaser for the next season.
It may eventually come up. I mean, it's so deep that I don't see why not.
Let's talk about some of the stories that really stood out to you for this season.
Right. Okay. So I would say, and I guess the internet also says that this season is split up into 3 arcs
Mhm.
where we had them, starting out, I guess they're essentially we're in the south and then they're moving into the north. So we have like all this stuff about traveling through the north. And there really was like a lot of logistics with that, where weather was getting in the way or aspects of the terrain were getting in their way. They eventually had to wait to be able to cross a giant lake. They ended up going to Norm's company. Like there was all these little stops. I was happy when they got to do the hot springs. That was like early on. I thought that was really touching. I also always like a little onsen moment in an anime. And so when Frieren finally got to have her like bathhouse moment, I was like, there's her wisdom. She's lived all this time and she knows we gotta hit up a bathhouse and relax. Of course, I also loved the stuff with Fern and Stark and them like trying to like develop a little relationship, them both being nervous about it and coming to Freeman for advice. And then Frieren giving both of them advice, but she really tried to give Stark advice and to tell Stark, oh, here's all the things that Fern likes. But then we got to learn that Frieren had only learned that explicitly from Heiter. Like Heiter practically wrote a list out for her, being like, Fern likes eating, Fern likes shopping, Fern likes a good view, like things like that. And like she was able to tell Stark that, and that was super cute. I thought we weren't going to get to see their date. I was glad that we did get to see their date. So that was another part during the North that was really, really cool. The norms company part was funny, and it did make me think about the logistics because like with the Northern Plateau, I do think of it being as like kind of like limited resources. I mean,
Hmm.
I know they were in the one region that was able to grow wheat, and that was an early on episode as well, and so they had decent food there, specifically bread. But other places not so much. Like they were really struggling. So the norm company being able to get resources spread throughout the northern land, like that's a logical or logistical area of concern.
Yeah.
And but I really thought it was funny that they arrived there and Freeman finds out that she was in super debt. And they were like, you're gonna have to work the mines for 300 years.
The interest was very, very interesting. So I love that part of it, but you know what my favorite arc was?
Oh, okay. What?
You want to guess?
So we still have Divine Revolte. Oh. Yeah, Divine Revolte is what, like these 3 episodes that again, it is like getting to the emergence of Revolte and then a fight with him and all that, but like I was more so of like this mystery going on with Genau.
Yeah.
And then also like Methode added some color in there. We eventually learned more about her. What did you like about the Divine Revolte
This
episodes?
source.
The swords. The Revolte swords?
the fact that he could wield multiples, and that was
Yeah, that was really cool. And that was a little education moment for us, the viewers, where they're saying, okay, a object created by magic is magical. It doesn't have to, it's not limited by physics or anything like that. So his swords could be, as heavy in an instant as you want it, or as light, or I don't know if they changed shape per se, but like they were magical. So that and the fact that he had 4 of them and it took them a moment to figure that out. And I thought it was super cool. Like props to Methode, where Methode has a lot of abilities.
yeah, and a lot of knowledge.
And a lot of knowledge, and where she was able to like act as a coroner and like assess, and her and Stark were trying to doing CSI crime scene investigation to figure, and they figured out like okay, it's somebody with 4 swords, and that related to Genau's story, like because Genau knew who that was, and his previous partner had been killed by Revolte, and that even related to his backstory about kind of he seemed like he didn't really have respect for people who were too kind-hearted, and maybe that's like not the best way to word it because it turns out his cold naturedness, his even more than stoicism, his like coldness was an asset, and I thought that was really cool. Freeman as a show does a really good job about that, about pointing out people's strengths and also their weaknesses. And that relates to like real life, and I love being able to relate stuff to real life. I love when a show relates to real life, where we have our strengths, but people also have their little bit of weaknesses, and sometimes those are 2 sides of the same coin. So, as a viewer, it was hard for me to totally understand Ganal's character, and I'm glad they stretched it out over 3 episodes so I could kind of figure out what's going on. There was a time when I thought he was going to be like a bad guy in a way, but it just was his cold naturedness. I wish I had a better way of saying that.
I think that's a good way to describe it. That's
Yeah.
what I got from it.
So, and then when he did get out of character, and like the final episode with Revolte, he did get out of character and was concerned about, oh, there's a little girl over here I gotta say. That's when he got. So it really was an asset for him to be true to himself. And I love that Siri recognized that. There's other characters throughout the series who will recognize and appreciate, some fundamental aspect about a character, even if it's one that on the face of it may seem like such a negative.
Okay. what do you think really stood out about Golden Land as far as the story?
Okay, that's the third arc, and at least the internet is saying that the Golden Land is not done. Like
Oh, okay.
yeah, it's just starting because we actually haven't even gotten there yet. But we have like this super teaser where we had the ferry driver telling them, "Oh, there's rumor about a place that's got all this gold or whatever," and it seems like they're heading there. We know Dinkin is going there, but also Dinkin said it was hard to get there by foot. So, but it seems inevitable that our main trio is going to end up there.
Wow. So let's talk about the characters of season two.
Okay, maybe with characters, I'll frame it in terms of first of all some of the battles, because like a lot of people watch anime for epic battles, and yeah, I know, but which is not really front of mind with Frieren, but that's one thing I'll say about season two, speaking of review, is like this season I thought did a good job of like balancing maybe like comedy or emotional aspects and then giving us a battle and then circling back to like a journey aspect, like kind of interspersing things. I thought the pacing was pretty nice. But so with that, like we got to see the main trio battle. We also got to see Genau and Methode battle. We got to see some of the bad guys, like we got to see how Revolte set with the
Oh
swords,
boy.
his minions as well. The trio is really interesting. They only have Stark as a frontliner. They most of the time don't really have a healer because Frieren even said that she's not necessarily a super good healer. But Frieren and Fern are gonna blast somebody straight out of existence. Especially Fern was showing out this season. Frieren did as well, and there was like a couple points when I thought Frieren like, did she even care if she killed Stark? That happened a couple times.
Hmm. That actually had me a little triggered. I was like, "Watch out!" And I was like, "Oh, okay, he's okay."
Yeah. And Stark has to really, really hold it. He's their only front liner.
But to that point, like him taking damage is not like a normal one. That kind of stood out. But we'll
Yes,
get to
that did. Okay, so Stark stands out because he is the warrior in their party. They have an elf and they have two humans. One of them's a warrior, one of them's a mage. So this warrior, this also relates to Stark's like homeland. Like he is from a warrior family. He is blood a warrior figure. He was taking a lot of damage. He literally got his head chomped by dragons. He got impaled by Revolte. And a suspension of disbelief moment, I was like, how are they surviving getting impaled? How is he surviving getting chomped? But I liked that the show commented on it, that Frieren and Farron commented on that. They're like, how is he so bad? And there was so many times when they showed Stark like doing push-ups or doing like push-up handstands. Like they were like giving us little winks about his physicality. So I think we are to understand that there is something truly special about the warrior class.
Mhm.
And I think Freerun as a show does a good job about that period where they're, elf, dwarf, human, demon. There's these unique things about them. And it's kind of relates to what we were talking about earlier of like two sides of a coin. They have their strengths, they also have their weaknesses. And that's something that I think connects to their particular trio. I'll admit I'm a little bit worried about it because under certain circumstances, our main trio could really be in trouble. So, like, I was thinking, what if it had been Freeman and Farron who stayed back in the village and had to fight Revolte? And where Revolte was, he wasn't really using magic. I mean, he was using magic, but it was weapons. He was fighting melee. So it was very good that Revolte was matched up against Genau and Stark. If he would have been matched up against Freeman and Farron, that may have been a very different outcome. And I think they're kind of leading us in that direction where like the matchups really matter, kind of like in a video game. Like certain player character types match up better. And the show has specifically talked about that, where like in the fight where Methode and Fern were sort of teamed up against Revolte's minions, Methode, who's so brilliant, was thinking, ooh, right now Farron's going to be struggling because she can't conceal herself, and that's Farron's strong suit is concealment. But the fog that was able to detect mana made it so that Fern could not conceal herself. And so Methody's like, ooh, I gotta fix this so that there's a type advantage again. So that the show is really leading us with that, and they do a great job about like delineating the different types. Frieren has her whole philosophy about demons where she thinks they're truly completely evil. We've seen how like dwarves are special, stuff like that.
I think that's a great way. And the enemies, I think we've already talked about. But speaking of the enemies, you mentioned something about the foreshadowing of what you think is coming for season 3. So let's talk a little bit more about the enemies because I think they showed somebody who's going to be important for season 3.
Well, for sure, yes. First, I'll circle back to Revolte for just a second. Loved Revolte's character design. I loved the lead up to it. They teased us, they showed us little glimpses, and then when we finally get to see him, and they called him Divine. And he was super epic. He was like a really attractive character design. He looked powerful, he looked big, he was really scary. However, I was surprised that he was defeated in basically like one episode. Mind you, it's not like a DBZ moment of like dragging out a battle for 12 episodes, but for him to be like divine and to be a demon general and the first demon general that we've seen, I kind of thought he would be a little more formidable. Not to say he wasn't formidable, it just seemed kind of fast that they defeated him so easily.
True.
But it was super great going back to characters to get to see all that Genau is capable of. I don't think I'd ever seen his yellow wings before.
That was special.
And I had to look it up. I had to be like, I'd look up what is Niello, and I guess it's like basically like a metal or something. And so that's why they're able to slice through stuff. Like they are like flexible and whatever, but I guess they're also like kind of like a metal. I don't know.
It was cool to
That's what the
see.
internet told me. Yeah. They did tell us that Mocked is coming. And we have all these German names, and it's like, what does Mocked mean? Like to create, to make. I guess we basically know that he's making all the golden stuff, but it's gonna be cool to see it no matter what. I did want to circle back to some side characters, because, a lot of people, side characters are some of their favorite characters. I mean, I love the main characters. They give us so much humor and action and all that, and emotion, all that good stuff. But we really got some new characters too. Like we saw two new dwarves with Omen Fast. That was early on. Like I almost forget about it, but he was super cute, and we got that story about the bow shaft, and then the other elf who was trifling, not trifling, like meddling.
He was bored, so
He was bored.
yeah, he
Yeah.
created some.
And so Ultimate Fast is really cute. I don't remember. No, Freeman had met him before, right? Yeah. So even though they were new to us, the viewer, they were still characters that Freeman had met before. Same with like Norm's company. Like she had been there before. She actually wanted to avoid them. I think it's funny when Freeman wants to actually like avoid characters. But the other dwarf that we met was Gayan. And that was towards the end where he was building that bridge for all those years. And I said it in my episode review, but I thought it was really moving, that he devoted all this time to the bridge, but that it's what related to Himmel. And again, Himmel like being this wise and just really good guy where he's like, I won't get to see this bridge built, but here, I'm going to pay for it, and it will be for Frieren. Because, like, her previous party, on Frieren's previous journey, she obviously had really good connections with these people, but Frieren is such a unique character. It's one of the special things about the show, period, that she is a stoic female character. That's really not that common in anime, so I want to mention it in the season review. Frieren is a stoic female character. She's also ancient, she's very old, she's an elf. Um, she has tons of knowledge. She literally collects as many grimoires as she can, but she lacks in like the interpersonal connection. So even though she did this journey with Himmel, it's almost like she wasn't, I don't know, it seems like she wasn't in the moment or something. And now recollecting beyond Journey's End, she can think back and realize it's like, oh, this was something special that I had with Himmel, or that I had with Heiter, or that I had with Eisen. So that moment with the bridge was like, I don't know, it was a moment where Himmel really explicitly was like, I'm giving this great thing to Frieren, this gift. I did want to say a little bit more about Methode. We mentioned that she was from the north. They kind of threw that in, but in fact, her family was solely devoted to fighting demons. And they kind of expressed it like in a narrow way, being like, just fighting. But Methode had a broader interest than that. And so that's why she has a lot of skills. I mean, she dispelled fog, she ran analyses on stuff. She had the fighting skill. She's also brilliant to be strategizing. And because she actually broke out of the limitations of like her family, that allowed her, like, she saved the day.
What about our boy Dinkin?
Okay, Zinkin, I could really stand to like rewatch the first class mage exam because I know he ended up battling Frieren, I think. We got to see like that Dinkin was like a badass already. So, and I think we even knew that like he was trying to get back home. So this is like him realizing that, him achieving what he's been trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
It's just unfortunate that his home, we kind of know, has already been taken over by what's presumably a demon who is up to no good. So it's going to be really cool. I love that even going into the next season, there's still an emotional aspect about home. Dinkin is going home. His wife is deceased. Like, he's going to see his wife's grave.
Mm.
But then we also know that there's going to be a fight. Like, we're going into season 3 already with an emotional connection and an excitement for some fighting.
I'm all about a little bit of fighting, but yeah, I think that was a great review of the side characters. What are your final thoughts on Frieren season 2?
For season 2, it was only 10 episodes. It already, like, is kind of short, and I think that also, like, contributes to why I feel of it as a bridge between season 1, which is long, like 24 episodes,
Mm-hmm.
and then season 3. I don't know how long that's going to be, but it was super enjoyable. Again, I thought they did a really good job of balancing it. I definitely got more of a connection, maybe to more of the side characters, like especially Genau, like that Divine Revolte arc where we learned so much about Genau. That's probably the character I had the deepest connection to, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, maybe not so much Frieren or even Fern or Stark. Like, they still added humor and interest and stuff like that. But Genau is probably the one that I had the most connection to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Meow.
Any?
Stark for me was my boy. I mean, like that one act strike where it's like golden lightning. I was like,
Yeah.
that's my boy. That's how I would do that too. So no, I'm honestly just excited because to your point, if we know it's going to be a battle, it almost makes me speculate. Like, does the first episode start with like a little bit of a boom bam pow? I think we can speculate later, but I was just in love with it. I didn't
Yeah.
expect, I'll be honest. I started season 1. We watched it together, and we
Yeah.
watched second season as it was coming out.
Yeah.
I didn't expect to be in love with it the way I did, but I was very happily surprised by it, and I think it's going to be exciting. So I'm ready for the next season.
That's a good point. I think a lot of people have been surprised by Frieren. I mean, people who've read the manga already know, but if you're just watching the anime, I remember watching season 1 and it just felt like a really nice, pleasant experience, but I actually didn't really know what to make of it.
Right.
And then even in season 1, not to be reviewing season 1, but I remember I was surprised when all of a sudden it turned into some action. I wasn't even expecting it to be action. I was almost thinking it was going to be like slice of life or comedy the whole time. But no, Frieren gives you it all. Character depth, epic battles,
comedic relief is in
comedy,
there.
journey, beyond journey.
Yeah, they give you spells that help you flip the perfect pancake, which I was excited about that
Right?
one. I
They
kind
were
of
the fluffy
I
pancakes.
kind of wanted that one, but
I
I'm
know.
excited. But the negative thing is,
Well, okay, so I'll say something to look forward to is going to be October of 2027.
y'all got some more of that free reign for me. I need free reign.
He's itching for free
I
reign.
need it. That's
I know. So apparently it's been announced that free reign is coming October 2027. I'm sure it's so well written. It's so well written. Maybe that's in summary. So well written.
yeah.
So that's our last sips. Let's have our tea. But that's it for Free Run Season 2. Again, subscribe, like this video if you enjoyed it, and subscribe so that you get some more season reviews as well as episode recaps.
Yeah.
But anime makes me happy, and that's the tea.